Let's just pray for a moment. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my salvation. Amen. I would like to take our gospel lesson as the basis for our homily today. The gospel lesson about Jesus multiplying the fish and the loaves. And the topic of our sermon is candidates for miracles. I would like to begin by asking a question. The question I ask you is also the question I ask myself. And this is the question: do you believe in miracles? If I have to answer that question myself, it would be very positive. Yes, I do believe in miracles. Another question: have you ever experienced any miracles in your life? For myself, I must answer yes. How do we define miracles? Well, that's maybe more difficult. It's not that simple. And for myself, I define a miracle when I see the amazing, beautiful sunset or sunrise. I define a miracle when standing at my kids' birth. I was lucky enough to be there with both of them. They birthed, and it was a miracle. It was fantastic. It was just something out of my own experience. It was just so great seeing new life coming into this world. But I also experienced miracles in the ministry, things that I experienced as a pastor, and saw God doing something that I cannot do, something that boggles my mind, something that I actually had nothing to do with, but just be maybe a channel at the best. I remember in my former congregation, there was a family, a wonderful family. I loved them. It was a family, father, mother, and I think they had there were 6 kids, most of them grown-ups. But they were in church every single Sunday. And I know exactly where they sat. They had their pew. Wonderful family, but there was one problem in this family. The father was alcoholic. And I remember very clearly that we prayed for him many, many times. Many times we had counseling, and we did everything possible to get him off the drinking. Nothing helped. Yet every Sunday they were there, and we were just journeying with them, trying to see what can be done. But humanly speaking, very little could be done. We prayed, and even that didn't help that much. And I remember one Wednesday morning, we used to have women's prayer meetings on Wednesday mornings. My wife was in charge of that. But usually I was at church, maybe in the office somewhere. And I remember every single Wednesday, a gentleman and his wife came to the women's meeting. Mary Ann would go to the meeting, and then he would sit either in his car, or he would go to a restaurant close by or something, do shopping. But he was there also. And this one Wednesday morning, I remember very clearly that I greeted them as they came in. And then he said to me, well, I want you to pray for me again. I said, fine. And I sat with him in his car, and we talked. And I just prayed from a very simple prayer. And I didn't even know if I really believed what I was praying. I was praying for deliverance. I was praying that God will set him free. The same prayer I said so many times before. After the prayer, I said amen. And we parted. And the Sunday morning, when I got on the pulpit, I was glancing over the congregation, and I could see, but there's something different in this pew. They were glowing. They were smiling. And afterwards, usually I greet the people at the main door, and afterwards, the woman, Marianne, she was there first. And she was glowing. She said, guess what? I said, no, I don't know. She said, guess what? I said, I can't read your mind. You have to tell me. I'm not that good. And she said, listen, no drop of alcohol since Wednesday. And he was glaring. Everybody was just, they were in a quiet state. And I said, thank God for that. And that was suddenly God delivered him from drinking. And when I left there, years after, he was still free. There was nothing that I did. And I was just stunned by what God was doing. And once again, God was overriding my reason. You see, sometimes we are locked in, we are boxed in by our own reasoning and by our own theology. And here God he did something that was not possible. And that's, for me, is a miracle. You see, throughout a person's life, there are times when we either need a miracle or God wants us to be a channel for miracles to happen. Somebody said, if you have a problem, you are a candidate for a miracle from God. Your problem isn't a problem, it's a ticket to a miracle. In the life of Nick, the person I told you about, God had him as the candidate for a miracle, and then through him, God performed a miracle in his family. They were never the same after that. He restored them. He healed them. You see, during the past few weeks, during the morning services, we explored the topic of getting out of the box, living out of the box. You see, if we want to grow, the box is not the place to grow. You have to get out of that box, because we are boxed in, and we are very used to our little boxes, and we love our little boxes. We don't want change. I say to the morning congregation, I hate change. The older I get, the more I hate it. The more I love my little box. And I think God knows that. And God is sometimes, he just shakes the little box. And then I know it's time to get out. It's time to grow again. And I wouldn't want to miss that for anything in the world. And this is here in Matthew 14. There is a wonderful story, and we read it in the gospel lesson this afternoon. It's a story of 5,000 men. Sorry, ladies, you weren't counted, yeah? So 5,000 men at least, and if we count in the ladies, the women and the children, maybe about 20,000 people. It was a gathering that we could today maybe call a revival meeting. They were all there. And Jesus was ministering to them, he was healing them, he was restoring. It was a really, really, really busy day there. And then it was getting late. And of course, with the disciples, the voice of reasoning kicked in. So they said to Jesus, let's send them away. You see, for them, it was, if they were a church, it was a come to us church. But when the crisis came, it was go away church. So they reasoned, and maybe not without merit. They reasoned, well, we don't have anything to supply to them. We cannot give them anything. So the logical solution is send them away. Let them go to the town. Let them go buy food. This is where our responsibility stops. And then Jesus did something very interesting. He said, no. No. You see, he wanted this crisis to be the catalyst for a miracle. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And the thing is, he did not perform that miracle immediately. It is as if he wanted to let them suffer a bit. They had to feel it. They had to grasp the intensity of what is going to happen, what was about to happen. You see, when God wants to provide a miracle, he wants to do it in partnership with his children. It's not something over there, it's something here. Throughout a person's life, as I told you, we either need a miracle or God wants us to be a channel for a miracle to happen. The disciples didn't understand that very well. And they were about to be kicked out of their little boxes. As I said, their only solution was to send these people home. No crisis, no problem then. That was the voice of reason. They were so boxed in with what they knew. And they were lost with what they didn't know. Boxed in that. The evening approaches. 15,000, maybe 20,000 people still in attendance in the open. Jesus seemed to be unfazed by all of this. And for the disciples, it was a growing crisis. You see, a crisis, that's how it posed itself. Somebody asked, I think Benjamin Britten, how does one fall into bankruptcy? And he said, gradually and then suddenly. And the same with a crisis. It builds up, builds up, builds up, and then suddenly there's this huge pinnacle of the crisis. Back to the open fields. There they were, hungry. What the disciples didn't know was that every miracle starts with a problem. Every miracle starts with a need, a question, a hurt. If we have a problem, we are a candidate for a miracle. Little problem, little miracle. Big problem, big miracle. So what did Jesus do? He said to them, you give them. What an impossibility it was. Where are we going to get the food to feed these people? Again, logic. Again, the box. Well, Andrew. We don't very often hear Andrew speak. But Andrew must have been somebody really special. Because he talked a young boy out of his lunch. And he came there with this little boy with 2 fish and 5 little pieces of bread. I think for that little boy it was something to behold. Can you imagine that little boy, what kind of story he had to tell at home? Let's call him Isaac. And Isaac would run home and say, Mom, do you know what happened today? No, Isaac. Well, I had my lunch, and you know how many people were fed? 5,000 men. Isaac, what did you do? Isaac, go play. So little Isaac, maybe he told it to his father, he told it to his friends, he told it to his schoolmates, and later on he told it to his children, his grandchildren, and they after that. You see, that boy learned that day, you can trust Jesus with your lunch. He only needed his lunch. You see, we can trust Jesus with our lives, with our stories, with our lunch. And the moment I trust him with my lunch, With this little that I have, guess what? Everyone around you gets lunch. We are partnering with God in a miracle. Joseph trusted God with just a dream. David trusted God with 5 stones and a sling. Hannah trusted God with just a prayer. Moses trusted God with a stutter and a staff, and God parted the Red Sea. Abraham, he trusted God with his age. Daniel trusted God with his youth. Peter trusted God with his old Simon that became Peter. You see, God said, or Jesus said to them, you provide the bread, let me take care of the miracle. You provide the bread, I take care of the miracle. You don't have to do a miracle. God doesn't want us to get into the miracle business. It's a bad business. But he wants to get us involved in the giving of bread business. What does your lunch look like? Maybe our 5 loaves and our 2 fish is maybe just words of hope, a helping hand, a flickering of talent that we have, music, sewing, skills, letter writing, whatever. You see, God doesn't need our suggestions. He needs our participation. And we sometimes lose miracles because we don't want to participate. You see, without God, you cannot. Without you, God will not. Without God, you cannot, but without you, God will not. What did they do? 5 loaves, 2 fish, nothing. So he took it with his hands. The hands of God are taking hands. Giving hands, but also taking hands. And he lifted it up, and he blessed it. It tells me something of the heart of God. A heart with compassion, a heart that's in touch. He broke it. That's not good. We don't like broken things. But it seems as if this is a pattern, what I give to God. If he doesn't break it, he cannot give it, he cannot share it. We sometimes hold on to what we have because we're so afraid that it's going to break. And yet he's taking that and he's breaking it. And after breaking it, he shares it. That's a miracle. In my life, I had to learn this lesson over and over again. The lesson of Ephesians 3, verse 20. He is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. I believe in miracles. I believe that God wants to do a miracle through our lives, in our lives, but moreover, through our lives. And maybe the miracle is not what we expect. Maybe the miracle is not what we have in mind. Maybe the miracle was not what Andrew had in mind. I don't think he had anything in mind. He brought it to Jesus. And he let him have it. Everything. All of it. If I bring to Jesus what I have, and I leave it with him, he can do so much. The problem is, if you're like me, I like to have control. Take it back. I want to have some kind of say in the story. And Jesus says, no, give it all to me. I'll take it. I'll bless it. I'll break it. Then I'll use you to share it.